police department has said that you impeded the investigation.
Well, that's pretty confusing. I mean, it's real confusing because a couple days after it was reported that Chandra Levy had been missing, after her father had called me here in California, 2 days later, I had 2 detectives in my house in Washington, D.C., and we had a 45-minute interview. So I answered every question, gave them every bit of the detail in that interview. And you know how Washington, D.C. works. It has dual jurisdiction. Well, the next interview, there was a new set of personnel in that interview. In the third interview, there was the Department of Justice, the federal prosecutor. I had to go through that interview. And then in the fourth interview, there was the FBI. Now, they all asked the same questions over and over again.
Maybe did they specifically ask you if you had a romantic relationship with Chandra Levy?
They asked every question they wanted to ask and every detailed question they asked, and I answered.
And did you tell them that you did have a romantic relationship with her?
I told them everything they asked, answered every question, and I did nothing to slow down the investigation.
Now, when Mrs. Levy called you and said that her daughter was missing, and she asked you point blank, she says, at a critical time in the investigation as to whether or not you had an affair with her daughter, you answered, according to her, matter-of-factly, no. Were you telling the truth?
I never lied to Mrs. Levy. The fact of the matter is that whole week I had several conversations with the Levys, Dr. Levy and Mrs. Levy. We talked about several items in the case.
So when you said no, you were telling the truth?
What Mrs. Levy asked me was a series of questions about a lot of things. And I'm sorry if she misunderstood those conversations, but in those conversations, she made a lot of statements. My job was to console and do what I could do to be helpful, but I never lied to Mrs. Levy at all. I'm sorry if she misunderstood the conversations. She made several statements about a variety of different people. My role was to listen, to be helpful. I knew they were going through pain and anguish, and I was doing everything that I could do to be helpful to them and not be a problem.
Congressman Condit, I do not know exactly whether you did have an affair with Chandra Levy or not, because you will not answer that question. Now, when Mrs. Levy asked you if you had had an affair, she says you said no, and you are now saying that you didn't lie to her.
I'm saying that, yes.
So are you saying that she misunderstood you when you said no?
Well, I'm not sure what...
You should have said yes?
I'm not sure what conversation she was talking about. She made several references to several people. My job was just simply to be helpful to her, to try to get through whatever she was getting through. I never lied to Mrs. Levy.
Well, I mean, here...
Like everybody else, would be amazed at the magnitude and success of it. John McCarthy at the Pentagon. John.
Peter, we are standing outside the Pentagon at this point. It has been already a long morning for rescue workers and police here. One eyewitness I talked to who was on this busy highway outside the Pentagon this morning said he saw an airplane coming directly over his head. It was an American Airlines plane. He could see the number on the plane. He could almost see the passengers inside as it went along the highway, started clipping off the high wires and the different light poles along the highway and slammed directly into the side of the Pentagon. As we said earlier, Peter, the aircraft penetrated deep inside the Pentagon. It is organized in rings from the E ring on the outside. It penetrated all the way into the A ring in the inner part of the Pentagon. After it burned for a number of minutes, a part of the building collapsed. By the time rescue workers could get in there, the destruction was just terrific.
So, John, do you have any sense of the casualties?
We don't have any sense, Peter, except the size of the medical operation that has been set up here is enormous. They are anticipating the casualties. Certainly the injured will be in the hundreds. I certainly don't want to speculate on those killed.
And, John, it's a little hard to get a sense of the size sometimes for the picture. Can you describe, maybe in feet or in yards, how big a penetration this is?
The roof is collapsed, Peter. There is a chasm in the side of the Pentagon that is probably 200 or 300 feet across. From the roof of the Pentagon, there is this huge V shape that has collapsed. You can see deep inside the Pentagon from the street now.
This is into the inner courtyard of the Pentagon itself.
It's into the innermost ring of the Pentagon, Peter. I have not been able to get into the courtyard, but I was told that the penetration was all the way into the deepest ring of the Pentagon.
And John, the office building, the Pentagon is about, what, 6 stories high?
It's 5 stories above ground, Peter, and several stories below. Clearly the damage is primarily above ground, but also some of those in the lower offices. I was sitting in the Pentagon when the attack happened. I was on the opposite side of the building. It shook the entire building. It was very clear that something terrible had happened. There was chaos immediately after the attack, Peter. Secretary of Defense, I walked out with the Deputy Secretary of Defense. The Marine Corps Commandant couldn't get out the door because security had locked it. It was chaos.
Okay, John, and the fires are still burning at the moment, we believe?
They are still burning. They are mostly oil fires, it appears, Peter. The fire hoses have been on the various fires for the last several hours, so they're beginning to put them out. But obviously there is still heavy gray smoke coming out of that portion of the Pentagon that was so terribly damaged.
John, there are a couple of aircraft at least around the country today which are still unaccounted for. You gave a very clear description earlier of how this aircraft had approached the Pentagon, but did anybody able to identify it as an aircraft associated with an airline?
Absolutely, Peter. The eyewitness I talked to looked up and said it was an American Airlines plane. I saw it clear as could be. It went right over the top of my car and clipped a pole right in front of where my car was.
Thank you very much, John McCarthy. I actually think that you may have said that earlier, and I simply lost it in terms, just lost it. And so we now know that it was, from at least one eyewitness there, it was an American Airlines aircraft which crashed into the Pentagon. So let me just try to get some grasp on the airplane. We have 2 United flights, a 757, which was on its way from New York to San Francisco, which crashed near Pittsburgh. We have a United flight which crashed from Boston to Los Angeles, United 175, and we do not know where that aircraft has crashed or been crashed as of now. And we have these 2 American flights, one from Boston to Los Angeles, which is a 767 with 81 passengers and 11 crew on board. We're talking about almost 100 people on American Flight 11. And American Flight 77, which was scheduled from Washington to Los Angeles, with 58 passengers and 6 crew members on board. And John Miller and I have been sitting here looking at each other about where these flights were going. And there's several ways to speculate about it, but you came up with one very interesting on already.
From a forensic standpoint, if you look operationally to crash these flights, it would have been just as simple to get on the Washington shuttle or the New York shuttle and crash one into the Trade Center and the other in the Pentagon. The choice of flights here, Newark to San Francisco, Boston to L.A., Dulles to L.A.
Excuse me, John, I apologize. Let me come back just because we have the New York governor here.
Sure.
Governor George Pataki, the governor of New York, I believe, is on the telephone or somewhere. Governor Pataki, do you hear me?
Yes, Peter, I hear you fine.
Well, why don't you first start off, sir, and give us your appraisal of the day so far.
It's just a horrific scene, and everybody's pulling together. We're activating the state emergency forces, but our hearts and prayers are with the victims and the families of those victims, and we have to, at this point, just focus on trying to help as many people whose lives are at risk as possible and dealing with those who have been injured.
Do you have some sense of the magnitude of casualties?
We don't want to quantify a number, but obviously it's a horrific incident that really is just an incredible outrage against the people of New York and the people of America. But at this point, our focus is on trying to make sure that those whose lives are still at risk are as protected, and those who have been injured are treated as quickly and as well as possible.
Governor, do you believe that thousands of people have been killed?
I don't want to use a number, Peter. At this point, the goal is simply to try to help as many people as possible. We're working closely with the city, with our National Guard forces coming in to help relieve the city police and fire. Obviously, it's a situation that just cries out for people to be horrified, but what we have to do at this point is focus on helping those who are at risk, helping those who have been injured, making sure there's an orderly removal from Lower Manhattan, and that is our focus at this point.
Governor, are you in a position to go to the scene? Are you in a position to go to Lower Manhattan? Do you think you should? Would you like to? Or are you locked down?
No, I'm in the city, but the important thing is to be able to stay in contact with the White House, with City Hall, with our statewide emergency services. We've gotten offers of support from all the surrounding states with their emergency services, and the critical thing right now is to be able to coordinate to make sure that the response is the strongest and the most compassionate it can be for the people whose lives are still at risk. And we're mobilizing National Guard units from across the state. We're getting help from the surrounding states and coordinating with the city, and that's what we have to do at this point.
And Governor, what have you done about the other so-called high-profile potential targets in New York City, like the UN and the bridges and things like this? Are they all evacuated and locked down now?
UN's evacuated. The tunnels have been closed. The George Washington Bridge is open under security for emergency services coming in and people going out. We've shut down most of the mass transit. Grand Central is open under very tight security, but people who pass through the security have limited service to the northern suburbs, and we're doing the same thing on Long Island. But the important thing now is to provide as much help as quickly and as effectively to those whose lives are at risk or those who've been injured, and we're working with the city and federal officials to make sure that happens.
Do you believe that New York City is now under control?
New York City has been under attack, and until we get through this, we just have to continue to respond as strongly as we can.
And are you in a profile now? Are you in a position where you actually think there's a potential for more?
We just don't know. That's why we have to not only help those who have been injured, but also take every security step we can to try to prevent further incidents. We just don't know, Peter.
Okay. Governor Pataki, thank you very much. Governor George Pataki of New York, who is in New York City, which of course is where he probably belongs at a moment like this. Downtown Manhattan is saying simply that the National Guard has been called in, the tunnels are closed, the George Washington Bridge, which goes across the Hudson River from the west side of Manhattan into New Jersey. Just remember, a large segment of many thousands of people from New Jersey work in New York, and there's tremendous commerce back and forth on a daily basis. That has all been brought to a help. It's interesting to recall, John Miller, that the attack on the trade towers in '93 was launched from New Jersey, or at least the operational headquarters of the people who attacked the Trade Center were in New Jersey.
Correct. And the building of the bomb and the original conspiracy was all carried out in towns right across the river. In fact, the conspirators later admitted that they watched from New Jersey to see if the buildings would in fact fall, and they didn't. This time they did.
They did today. And Governor Pataki trying, as politicians again must on occasions like this, trying to express the horror and the commitment that the political establishment feels to those people who have died and those people who need to be rescued. You know, it's an answer to every question about whether or not something was locked down or something. He came back every time that their priority now is to try to help those people who are in deep and, in some cases, still desperate trouble. George Stephanopoulos, one of our senior reporters, is downtown. Hey, George, where have you been? What have you seen? What do you think?
Well, Peter, I'm going to give you kind of a pool report from several of our correspondents down here of basically what happened down here in downtown New York between 9:45 and 10:45 when the two explosions and the collapse of the World Trade Center happened. At the time, I was actually in the subway heading towards the World Trade Center right around Franklin Street, and after the first explosion, the subway station started to fill with smoke. The subway cars started to fill with smoke, and the subways actually stopped. They then diverted us around the World Trade Center to Park Place, which is one stop beyond the World Trade Center. We got to that train station at around 10:35, Peter, and it was a scene unlike I've ever seen before in my entire life. As we tried to get out of the subway station and walk up into the street, it was pitch black, midnight black, snowing soot all down through downtown Manhattan. This was about 2 blocks from the World Trade Center. You couldn't see a foot in front of your face at that time. We then worked our way back uptown. All of the firefighters and police officials and National Guard are now evacuating everyone out of lower Manhattan. They're going east towards Brooklyn and north, which is where we are now, up on Canal Street. I should add as well, Peter, we had one of our reporters was downtown and had a sight line of the World Trade Center at around 9:48, which is around the time I believe the first tower collapsed, Gloria Rivera, and she saw 2, then 3, then 4 people jump out of the top floors of the World Trade Center. She was with a firefighter who said, they're not falling, they're jumping. Watch their arms waving, and they counted 12 people jump off the top floors.
Do you want to continue, George?
Well, right now, as I said, they are evacuating everyone else out. But just to give you another sense, Peter, all over Lower Manhattan, the sidewalks, the streets are covered with about a quarter to half inch of dust, of soot, as if it were Pompeii. Most people are pretty calm right now. They're evacuating slowly as the firefighters come in. But it really was one of the most frightening, horrific scenes I've ever seen in my life.
Thanks, George, very much. Come back anytime with a report. As you were concluding there, watching these guys go up that escalator, and if it's in the World Trade Center, we know that their cameraman got out, but we don't know about anybody else because, you know, within an hour and something of the time these two attacks had occurred, these two buildings had completely disappeared, and you begin increasingly to see more dramatic footage. George Stephanopoulos made a reference to Pompeii near Naples on the west coast of Italy, which was, you know, buried by a volcano, and you get exactly that same sense of freezing stuff in soot and dirt, as might have occurred by a volcano. Jim Kallstrom, with whom we're long familiar, former official of the FBI in the New York office, is on the air, very deeply involved in the Flight TWA 800 investigation. Jim, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
What do you think?
Peter?
I'm listening, Jim. I just say, what do you think? I mean, just start and all.
Well, my first thought is with the tremendous casualties, and the death toll is just overwhelming. It's a day that 50 years from now, our children, if we're still teaching history, will be taught about when we went to war on American soil with terrorism.
Jim, if you had a chance to talk to your more active colleagues in the FBI at the moment about what they're doing at the moment, whether they're able to, I mean, it seems the hardest thing at the moment is to make an appraisal of all this. It just happened, and it's just, in some respects, it's happened and it's happening, right?
Peter, you're right. I mean, it happened. It's shocking, but in some ways it isn't shocking. I mean, we've had, you know, the hatred of America played out at the Trade Center in '93. They tried to take the Trade Center down. We've had the hatred played out in the USS Cole, the bombings of our embassies in Africa, the bombings of the barracks in Saudi Arabia. So now it's being played out big time here in the United States.
Jim, what is the principal goal of the FBI at a moment like this, when all of the emergency services are brought to bear in all of these locations? What's the FBI actually doing at the moment?
I think the first concern of the FBI right now, right this second, is there going to be something else happening in the next 5 minutes, 30 minutes, hour, 12 hours? Simultaneous with that, who did it? Where are they? What do we know? What's the intelligence base? Tell us. Why didn't we see this coming? Where do we go from here? What kind of articulate, defined information can we give the National Command Authority so that we can bring the necessary massive retaliation necessary without a lot of collateral damage?
Well, Jim, thank you very much for checking in with us, and please do at any time if you have news. That photo, as Jim was talking, Jim Kallstrom, the former director of the FBI here, and a major force in the investigation of TWA 800, which blew up off the south coast of Long Island.
And the principal operator in the first World Trade Center bombing. Key investigator.
Right. But it's interesting, forgive me, no offense intended to him, he doesn't have much to say either today, because in some respects there isn't much to say except the horror of it. But as we were looking at just a moment ago, listening to George Stephanopoulos talking to our reporters who witnessed the horrifying jump of some people from the top of the trade towers, you just saw a hint of the just ahead of this little piece of video here before, you saw a hint of what people were enduring at the top of the trade towers before they collapsed as a result of the intensity of the fire. And we've seen it before in other places around the world. Fire starts in a place, people often, ironically, not that it would have made any difference today, do the wrong thing, they get trapped in an open window by fire coming into their room, and finally they just jump, simply because if they don't jump, they're probably going to be burned alive. But as we have heard from, it's interesting that Governor Pataki is so nervous, and I don't blame him for a second, wanting to stay away from the magnitude of the casualties here today. But as John McKenzie reported from the fire department downtown, we got 200 fire department officials, 200 firefighters missing. I don't know whether or not this is a firefighter who's been brought, but you see in every case people getting oxygen because it isn't if it isn't collapse that kills in some cases like this, it is the deadly smoke. Anybody who's been involved in a fire knows the deadly smoke which suffocates people in a circumstance like this. But we're only getting touches, and it doesn't even have the chaos associated with it in many cases. We're just getting touches now of what has happened in these variety of places. The Pentagon are being kept, quite logically, I think, back at some distance. And in downtown, what's happened is that camera crews were downtown. I fear, to be perfectly honest, for some of the camera crews who work nothing braver than a cameraman either, who goes right in when something has happened and may indeed have been at some of those places. And it certainly takes time for video to get back from a location like this so that we get a widening appreciation of what has happened. But as I said, it's very hard to try to get some grasp now on the number of casualties. So we can do, in some cases, not more than just tell you how this is in terms of the whole country. The North American Air Defense Command, NORAD, is on the highest state of alert. And you had made references earlier in the morning how the United States and Canada have cooperated in trying to keep the airports locked down, lest there was another aircraft on the air. But John, talk to me about this for a second, and then we'll come to this business about fuel. Sure. You know, the North American Air Defense Command was a great factor in our lives in the 1960s.
In the Cold War, yes.
Exactly, and during the Cold War, it's up along the Northwest Territories and some of the independent areas of the North. Nobody thinks about it anymore, and here it is on a state of alert today.
No, but you factor that in, and evincing so many images that Americans are uncomfortable with. The idea that there's a no-fly zone in New York City, in Manhattan, being patrolled by F-16s with instructions to shoot down any errant aircraft, that the same is true in Washington, D.C., our nation's capital, that military people and doctors and military vehicles are coming to aid, that the National Guard is on alert. You know, the kind of images that used to only exist in the fantasies of 7 days in May, where, the Army would take to the streets, which has not happened yet. They've offered assistance and military logistical assistance, but that kind of thing that Americans are so uncomfortable with unfolding here.
And I realize, by the way, just as you mentioned it, something else is very important at the moment. And again, I don't mean to say this in melodramatic terms. Where is the President of the United States? The President of the United States led, I know we don't know where he is, but pretty soon the country needs to know where he is. And it seems to, I think, for me anyway, I apologize, the President needs to talk tonight. He left Florida a couple of hours ago. Our people in Washington are clearly listening and checking this as best they can. But one of the important factors at the moment is that the political leadership in the country be present, as Governor Pataki was. Mayor Giuliani of New York made an appearance on the street and was caught unawares like everybody else, but Governor Pataki came out and basically told the citizenry of New York in a variety of different ways, I assume, just exactly what they're trying to do. Now, here's a bulletin about the President's whereabouts. The President is about to make a statement at Barksdale Air Force Base shortly. Barksdale Air Force Base is in Louisiana. So, if this is accurate, and we'll check with Claire Shipman and our other reporters at the White House, and John Cochran, if he can, in Florida at the moment, who's with the President today. The President's not coming back to Washington at the moment. We'll leave that for just a second. We'll talk a little more about this business of the aircraft and the fuel. We're trying to figure out why would a plane going from New York to San Francisco, Boston to Los Angeles be involved in this? It could have been any plane, though, right? It
could have been, but when you consider the advantage to a terrorist, here you have a transnational flight. It's going to be a larger aircraft in each case, but, and this is the key, because we had speculated earlier, was there some additional explosives laden in these planes to cause these incredibly large explosions? It appears who's ever planned this has picked cross-country flights that would have the maximum amount of fuel you could carry on a domestic flight. Flights going from one end of the country to the other. The kind of jet that if you slammed into a building would ensure the maximum fire and explosion possible from any flight that you could have chosen. Again, Newark to San Francisco, Boston to LA, Dulles to Los Angeles, Washington to LA, Boston to LA. The planes that are being looked at in this attack today were apparently, or you could speculate, chosen to give the terrorists the very biggest bang for their effort.
And it's a very interesting point you make, because again, our assumptions tend to go when we see huge explosions like this. None of us understanding visually the power of explosives, that there were explosives on board, and so you're quite right, it may indeed have been the aircraft explosion.
I mean, John Nance could help us with this, but when you hear the amount of fuel, very flammable aeronautical fuel that's loaded onto a plane for a 3,000-mile trip or something, that's going to give you quite an explosion. Flight 800, which was an international flight, to those who saw it, was an incredible explosion.
John, if you'd sit at your station for a second, I'm just going to go and try to check one piece of information, and in that period of time, we're going to try to give you a little better sense of the disaster at the trade towers today. Here's something we've compiled, and we compile it as we go along.
I was standing next to One World Trade Center, and then all of a sudden I heard rumbling, and we all started running away from it. The glass like blew out and threw me onto the sidewalk, and I couldn't see for like 20 seconds. And then I started seeing vaguely the street, and I just started walking, and my eyesight came back.
I see you're bloody. You have dust all over you.
Yeah, it was bad. It was like a dust storm or something. Like I couldn't see anything.
How badly are you hurt?
I have no idea.
As soon as she got hit, I was thrown to a window. So I was very lucky to get out. There's a lot of people that didn't get out. There's a lot of people coming down the stairs, burnt up. It's bad.
We just come out of Tower 1. We were walking towards Broadway. They're saying, move along, move along, move along. I looked up as soon as we got across the street. I looked up, I saw the tower start to buckle. I just turned and ran, ducked down, put a jacket over my head. 3 or 4 of us huddled together, and it was just black everywhere.
Were you covered? Were you hit with debris?
No. But I mean, I was ducked behind a subway cover, so I put with the jacket over, the 3 of us, all of us huddled together. There was, dust and whatnot everywhere, but it was.
Building has just come down. The second everyone is being asked to get down, come down.
Can't even look at it because all I can see are people. I don't see a building. I see people. People hurt. Children without mothers and fathers tonight.
If you're just joining us, you probably already know the World Trade Center towers, the Twin Towers, the New York landmarks have collapsed and are gone. The Pentagon has been hit by an airplane, a series of hijackings apparently today at the root of this. What we know is hundreds, if not thousands, are injured, no count on the deceased yet, and that the investigation, a massive investigation, is just beginning to unfold.
But John, I stepped aside there, among other things, the moment to try to get some sort of sense from people who talk to, because as soon as this happens, people begin to think about a response. And we don't expect a response to come in the immediate future by any means. But I was just talking to Charlie Gibson from Good Morning America, and he'd been thinking about the same thing, that the response to this from the United States is going to have to be massive. They have to accomplish something in some way, because so much of the response to terrorism before by a large nation such as this, which is not impotent, but very limited in its capacity to operate at this kind of level. You were mentioning earlier the attacks against Osama bin Laden's training camps in Afghanistan. In retrospect, they spent, as you pointed out, more than $1 million per cruise missile. I forgot how many they sent. No, they didn't get anything. They didn't get anything. They didn't do anything. So it's an enormous challenge for a powerful nation to respond in an effective way, and the Pentagon is still burning, and today the World Trade Center towers have gone. Diane Sawyer is down in Times Square at the moment, and among other things, I think has been trying to get some grasp of the number of casualties involved. It must be very difficult, Diane.
It's impossible, Peter, no matter how many people you call. And of course, no matter what the facts we get now, one can only imagine what the facts will be later. I want to give you a sense of what it's like here in Times Square right now, because if you look outside, we have hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of people standing outside, just stopping still, a kind of respectful witness, looking up at the screens where we're broadcasting the pictures. They can't hear the sound. They are simply looking at the wordless horror and standing to show, in a way, respect. And I want to show you something else, because people have been sent home from Times Square, and across the way, the construction workers who were building the Toys R Us building next door to us just hung their signs outside. God bless America, and pray for families and victims. And we can only, of course, add to that that as crisply as we try to report what's happening here today, we join them. And this is not just another story, even for reporters who've been trained to do this for so long. A few things to add since this morning. We were on the air, of course, live when suddenly we get word of that first explosion at the World Trade Center, the first building. And initially, of course, we didn't know if it was an accident. We didn't know what had happened. And then we were on the air live when the second plane came in and the second plane hit. And I want to show you now. This is what we were seeing live on the air. And as you've expressed before, Peter, the combination of disbelief and horror and simple prayer for somebody to save the people who were inside that building is all anybody can do, as an entire network is broadcasting live something so unimaginable. I have talked, as you all have, and as George Stephanopoulos reported, to the people who were inside as these scenes were taking place. We now see the first collapse, which of course took place about 10 a.m. Eastern time, and then it would be about 28 minutes later that we would see the second collapse of the second building. And while we're watching the scene, each person desperate to stop this tape and go and do something. All we can do is relive the horror each time we see it. I have talked to people who are inside the building, one of them, Fran Martin, who is the aunt of someone who works here at ABC, and she was saying that the first experience inside the building was that earthquake-like feeling a number of people have mentioned, and then something else in an eerie, silent, kind of mournful foliage. You saw paper just wafting out in all directions, and it was so mysterious to everyone. They couldn't imagine what had happened. The paper was scattering, and we've now read some 3 miles out, way across the river, the paper from those floors. As they came down the stairs, we're told that people were remarkably calm, were remarkably respectful of each other as they were making their way down, even though a number of them had lived through that bombing 8 years ago. A number of them remembered what it was when the bomb went off in the basement of the World Trade Center. And of course, as we now know, if the cyanide gas had not vaporized in those bombs, that it would have been a cataclysm even beyond what was experienced then. So they could all relive it as they were making their way down. Now we're watching the scenes as the building is collapsing and people are running from it. People are covered with this kind of spectral suit from the building's collapse itself. I want to point out again, and you've talked about it too, Peter, all the firefighters were immediately called on duty. All the firefighters immediately raced in from wherever they were to help out, all the emergency medical service personnel. This was a great display of human concern and human consideration. And you've mentioned before, we have this report that 200 firefighters are now missing, and yet they have done everything they can. Every hospital is open, every hand is on deck, every doctor is standing by in the city of New York with all this courage and struggle and still heartbreak out there in the streets right now. So that's it from Times Square, Peter.
Thank you very much, Diane. I remember working with Diane on the Millennium broadcast on New Year's Eve 2000. Diane had such a joyful time in Times Square. It is, whatever you think of New York in general, it is a place where people from around the world gather to express themselves, and so we'll go back there on occasion to get some, you really get some sense of the world in Times Square. And President Bush has been on the phone today to a variety of world leaders, clearly discussing this with them at the highest possible level. And perhaps they're all as confused as the rest of us are as to what has happened, who perpetrated these acts of terrorism in the United States, and what is to be done in response. Though this is perhaps, we're only 4 hours since this actually happened, and perhaps it is not quite the time to begin to think about the precision of a response, but a response will be required of some magnitude that will mean something from the United States if one is ever able to pin down exactly who the perpetrators were. We told you that the president was in Florida this morning, where he'd intended to talk about education today and was coming back to Washington. He's made it as far as Barksdale Air Force Base in Louisiana, where he landed about an hour and a bit ago, just before noon Eastern time, where he's made a statement to the cameras, which we haven't got our hands on yet. But the president said that freedom had been attacked, but freedom will be defended. And the president is in touch with his national security team. Ann Compton, ABC's Ann Compton, who covers the White House for us for many years from us, tells us that jet fighters accompanied Air Force One, and that as best we can tell, the Air Force One was flying at a particularly high altitude. There are no planes taking off or landing or taking off in the United States at the moment, with the exception of Air Force One, though the Federal Aviation Administration says at the moment that 50 known aircraft, this is actually a few minutes old, 50 known aircraft are all in the sky within approximately 50 miles of their destination. So you can feel across the country that aircraft that were in flight are beginning to settle down. They were ordered to settle down by the FAA and to land at the nearest possible airport. And so that has begun to work out. Now, in Washington, I think Claire Shipman at the White House or near it has some further information about the president. Yes, Claire.
Well, that's right, Peter. Essentially, what we've learned is what he told the pool cameras a few minutes ago, and we're hopefully going to see in just a few minutes, but he said that he and this government have taken steps to ensure the functioning of the United States government, that the U.S. military is on high alert at home and abroad. He said he has taken all appropriate security measures to protect Americans. He says freedom itself has been attacked and freedom will be protected. And finally, he also said he will hunt down and punish those responsible for this. Again, we're hoping to see him in person, but as you mentioned, it looks as though this may be the secure place that they've decided on for the president, at least temporarily, Barksdale Air Force Base in Shreveport, Louisiana.
I'd be really curious, Claire, and I realize how difficult it is at the moment, whether or not there's not pressure, political pressure in Washington from the members of the president's own staff and cabinet for him to show up soon in front of the country and assure them beyond his statement that freedom has been attacked and freedom will be defended, of course, because it wasn't defended this morning.
Well, I think
whether or not the president to be seen in command in a more vigorous way.
I think you're absolutely right, and I'm sure it's a delicate balance right now between the Secret Service and those who are trying to protect the president, keeping him out of sight and someplace secure, and his political advisors who would clearly like to see him make a statement. You saw how quickly he did it this morning, as brief as it was, and certainly a piece of tape that we're going to see in a few minutes, we hope, is not what they would like to see the president doing right now. They would like to see him making something of a more formal statement. But again, it could be a number of hours before the president is back in Washington and prepared to talk to us from that forum.
Okay, thanks very much, Claire. We'll come back to you anytime you want. And again, none of us should be surprised at what's happening. First of all, Secret Service is a huge, powerful, authoritative organization which takes the president's safety and other members of the senior political leadership with deep and profound seriousness, but they have enormous power. And so if you're talking between a senior political official and the president, a Secret Service official of equal stature at the moment, who's going to win that argument at the moment? And this is particularly true in a situation which continues to unfold, because while the devastation, perhaps the greatest devastation has occurred in New York City this morning. It's also occurred outside Washington at the Pentagon, and the tension is there all across the country, because not only were the United Nations and various government buildings evacuated here in New York City, but the Sears Tower in Chicago, the tallest skyscrapers in Boston and Cleveland and Minneapolis, and the Space Needle in Seattle. So the psychological effect on people in the country is huge. It may indeed be settling down after several hours, but the president and his response to this is also part of the psychological package, because the country looks to the president on occasions like this to be reassuring to the nation. Some presidents do it well, and some presidents don't. But ABC's Ann Compton is with the president at the moment, and we have her on the telephone. Annie.
Peter, it has been a frightening couple of hours for President Bush. We took off in Air Force One from Florida, where he first got word of this, and we literally, Peter, have been flying at well over 40,000 feet west, the White House unable to tell us where we were headed or how long it would take. There were jet fighters off the wing just out of our sight until we landed. And the president has spent the time on board the aircraft talking not only to world leaders, but to the vice president, to his cabinet. He even checked in with Mrs. Bush, trying to get more information. We were high enough so that the Air Force was actually able to catch some television signal. We don't know much about what's gone on the ground, but he has been able to see some of it on a very fuzzy television picture. We landed here at Barksdale Air Force Base. This is near Shreveport, Louisiana, at about 11:45 Eastern Time. We were not allowed to use cell phones or give you any indication of where we were until local people noticed the plane on the ground. The president has just made a statement, Peter, a very emotional one, saying that freedom has been attacked, but freedom will be defended, saying that America's military is on its highest state of alert. World leaders have been assured that the U.S. will do whatever it takes to protect America and Americans. Frankly, Peter, I thought the president not only looked grim, very solemn, but his eyes looked somewhat red.
Annie, let me ask you a couple of questions, if I may. First of all, the president was on a education trip, ostensibly in Florida today. How much of the national security team was with him?
This is actually a skeleton team with him on a short, it was a trip that lasted only about 24 hours. He was just making his last appearance before returning to Washington. And Karl Rove, one of his senior counselors, is with him, and his press secretary, Ari Fleischer, but none of the national security apparatus, such as Condoleezza Rice, who would ordinarily travel with the president on a more substantive trip. But on Air Force One, of course, he has the full resources of communications. But he does not have the full team with him.
Well, let's talk about this for a second, because when the president took off from Florida and went immediately to 40,000 feet, and I believe actually got a fighter escort for part of the way, it reminds one a little bit of what it was like in the Cold War, because the Cold War, there was always a provision that the senior members of the government, president included, could in fact run the country from a command center in the sky. Is that basically what's happening this morning?
Absolutely. In fact, the U.S. used to have 5 aircraft, now Air Force One. Let me know if we're being taken out of here. We may be scrambled out of here.
Okay.
Are we leaving? Okay, Peter, we are leaving. And
where are you going, Annie?
Peter, I have no idea. They have not told us. They have kept us. We don't even know whether we'll be able to see the president or travel with him, but we are told that he's been traveling. He will continue. They are still quite worried about his own security.
Off you go, and Ann, thanks very much for a very, very full report on the state of, and perhaps even a little bit of the mental condition of the president at the moment. And we cannot state it often enough. The country looks to him, and so he may have stopped at Barksdale Air Force Base in Louisiana, which is just where Arkansas and Texas and Louisiana all come together at an Air Force base out of the way, and he may be safe at 40,000 feet in Air Force One, but before long the country is going to expect him to be back in Washington to send, if not only a message, not just a message to those of us in the nation who look to the president for some sense of political national stability, but also to the other parts of the world where these enemies of the United States, with whom we've talked quite a lot about today, at the moment must surely think they have the United States on the run to some extent. And while the Taliban, the political leadership, political, military, religious leadership in Afghanistan said this morning that they condemned this and had nothing to do with it, and it could not have been Osama bin Laden because he wasn't sophisticated enough to do it. It had to be a country or a government, certainly. And while the chairman of the Palestinian Authority, Yasser Arafat, came out and put as much distance as they could between them and the Palestinian people, this acted in the Palestinian people, the president needs to be on station to talk it. As does the mayor of New York, and Mayor Giuliani is with us at the moment. Mr. Mayor, can you hear me?
I can, Peter.
Mr. Mayor, I saw you several times on the street today, and it looked like you were deeply sharing the horror that all of us feel. But I'd really appreciate, aside from, on top of your sentiments about all this, give us some sense of what's going on.
What is going on now is a massive rescue effort. We have thousands of police officers found an exit and got out, walked north, and took a lot of people with us.
My question is, the Office of Emergency Management headquarters, into which you put enormous effort for coordination in a disaster like this, has it been damaged? Is it
yes.
still operating? It's gone?
It's been damaged. I don't know how badly. And right now, that whole area of Manhattan, including the police department, which is another area we would operate from, City Hall, is another area we would operate from, have been closed off. So we've moved to a secure location in Midtown Manhattan where we're operating city government.
Is it fair to say, do you think, that all of your drills for dealing with terrorism and disaster are going according to plan, or has this been of such of magnitude that we've just all been caught totally off balance?
Oh, there's no question we were all caught totally off balance. No one could possibly expect large airplanes to crash into the World Trade Center the way this happened. I think, having said that, as I watched what the police officers and the firefighters were doing, I think they're going to save the maximum number of lives you could possibly save in a situation like this. I mean, the emergency efforts that they've been going through over the last 2.5 hours are nothing short of inspiring.
And when the National Guard comes in to say, did you say to take over or offer some relief, what can the National Guard do that you cannot do at a city level?
Well, at this point, what they can do is relieve men who are going to be exhausted physically and emotionally.
Now, just if you would, because I know how busy you are, just give us some sense of what you thought at the time about all this.
I thought that I would never live to see anything like this. I didn't think anything like this was possible. When I first arrived there, I rushed down there from Midtown Manhattan, and I saw the first building that had been crashed open. And when you look at it, it takes you a minute to really comprehend that this is actually happening. And to see people jumping from the top of the World Trade Center. I mean, I don't think I've ever had a nightmare that's worse than this.
Mr. Mayor, one last question. You said you never believed you'd live to see anything like this, and yet in the past you've been one of the leaders in preparing for just this
Absolutely.
Kind of thing to happen.
Yeah, but you keep you prepare for the worst, but you don't believe that it'll happen, and this is the worst. And I can only say that I thank God for the police department and the fire department that we have, because this would be much, much worse. And I'm also very proud of the people of the city. We evacuated Lower Manhattan with literally thousands of people, walked along with them, and they conducted themselves really, really, really well.
Well, I appreciate your time, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for communicating all this.
The Mayor of New York, Rudolph Giuliani, in his last term, immensely popular with some, not popular with others, which is not relevant at the moment, but because he puts his finger on something about New York. Whatever you think of New York, no matter where you live in the country, this is a city which behaves pretty well in crisis. There's a public spirit here in this city. You see it in blackouts, you see it in snowstorms. This is not the city of its it's not the city that we often criticize from other perspectives around the country in times of crisis. So when the mayor says he's proud of the people of New York, as well as the fire department and the police, one should not be surprised. But it is fascinating and terrifying to hear what he says. You prepare for the worst and you never believe it'll happen. And his emergency management headquarters right down there near the trade centers, which are no longer possible to operate, this is what they put into place so that in the worst of circumstances, government would have a place to operate. And they can't operate from there. They've had to move uptown because the police department and City Hall are not operable, if you will, under the circumstances. And he, the mayor, you heard it yourselves, said he never believed he would live to see anything like this. True of many people. George Stephanopoulos in downtown Manhattan with an eyewitness.
Yes, Peter, I'm here with Neil Stevens, who was in his apartment downtown early this morning getting ready for work as he heard the explosion. Neil, why don't you tell us what you saw?
Okay, I was in my apartment. I was getting ready for work. I heard a large explosion, and I thought at first it was thunder because there was thunder last night, but there was nice weather outside, so I didn't know what it could have been. And I looked outside, and I saw some construction workers who were working on the roof of the building, for the building next to mine. They were looking downtown. They were all looking downtown, and I thought, I wonder what they're looking at. So I looked over, and I could see the World Trade Center towers from my window. And I looked over, and I could see the tower, and there was a huge gash in the side of it. It's about 10 stories high, almost the full width of the building. And there was black smoke just billowing out of it, and flames, large flames. And I thought, my God, I don't know what happened, but huge explosion. And that was pretty much it, and made some personal telephone calls, kept getting ready for work, and I was in the shower and I heard the second explosion, and that's pretty much what I saw.
Thank you very much. Peter, we also have some news on the evacuations. We've spoken with 2 security guards in the second tower who did say the evacuation to the second tower had begun. And we've also spoken with people who were on the 82nd and the 86th floor. So many people were evacuated. Of course, we don't have any sorts of numbers. One final note, Peter, I was picking up on what Mayor Giuliani was saying about the work of the firemen and the policemen. I would also add a word for the transit authority. The subways were terrifying earlier this morning, but all of the employees of the transit authority did a terrific job of evacuating the subways, even though they were filled with smoke, keeping people calm and keeping them actually in the station so that they wouldn't go out into the street as the soot was falling. One other word, Peter. Right now, the people who are working downtown are handing out these respirators because there is some concern that there was a great deal of asbestos in the building. So they're asking everyone downtown who is walking downtown, if they're down there, to put on these respirators, and they're handing them out on the corners.
Thank you very much, George Stephanopoulos, who continue to work this story from as close as you can get to the disaster area. But imagine a city that's sort of frozen in place. You saw a picture just a moment ago of the George Washington Bridge, which is closed except under very serious security circumstances you can get across the. That means that's New Jersey on the other side, cut off from the island of Manhattan. All the tunnels are closed. The railroads are not operating, therefore, between New York and New Jersey. This island of Manhattan is pretty much frozen in place at the moment, while people wait and are reluctant to try to appraise the number of casualties that have been that have occurred in the World Trade Centers and their related area. But bear in mind that about 50,000, what did I say, Nancy? 50,000 people work in the trade towers. 80,000 people perhaps work in the adjoining areas. We've seen them in flight, and we have seen not one but 2 towers absolutely collapse upon themselves. And elsewhere in the country, we're still uncertain. There's still an unknown number of aircraft who've been ordered to land that haven't managed to get down to the ground. We're not absolutely certain that there are any aircraft on missions, if you will, which are unaccounted for, despite the fact there was a report some time ago that the aircraft which crashed outside Pittsburgh may have been on its way to Camp David. I emphasize that that's reporting of which we're absolutely not very sure at all. But ABC's Barry Serafin is at the Capitol at the moment, and we've been told for some time that the Senate leadership there was going to be sent to a secure location. Do you have a current status report, Barry?
Well, Peter, we're not sure exactly what we're seeing here, but a few minutes ago, about 10 minutes ago, a military helicopter landed here behind me on the west lawn of the White House. And then a large group of people were seen to walk out to it, get on board, and fly right above us, over the mall in the direction of the Pentagon, perhaps. My guess, and it's only a guess at this point, is that these were members of the Senate leadership and the House leadership, and perhaps members of the intelligence committees on their way to a briefing to try to figure out what in the world is going on today.
Were you able to walk up around the hill?
No, Peter, we, like everybody else, have been kind of pushed off of the hill. They've got a cordon for blocks now around the Capitol. In effect, they've sanitized that area. So we're about 4 blocks from the foot of the hill here.
And do you have any sense of was there a sense of anticipation there? People sort of waiting for something to happen at the Capitol?
Well, there is every time any kind of aircraft shows itself, and there haven't been many. There have been a few government helicopters moving around. All eyes turn to the sky, as you might imagine.
Precisely, Barry. Thanks very much, Barry Seraphin, who's up at the Capitol. One of the things that is absolutely certain at the moment, which is to say that the chain of command in the country
is involved in.
Mr. Secretary, are additional steps being taken to strengthen security in the United States in anticipation of some possible retaliation for this attack threat?
Well, most of the kinds of attacks that we've seen tend to have been planned months and months and months, in some cases years in advance. So the idea that any attack that could occur now would conceivably characterize as in retaliation for something, I think would be a misunderstanding of the situation. The United States is, as President Bush has indicated, is on a state of heightened awareness. And the armed forces around the world are on a state of higher alert than is normal. The forces in the United States are on a higher alert than has been the normal pattern for our forces. And the various organizations that deal with law enforcement in the United States, the FBI and state and local officials, are certainly aware that as of September 11th, we have to be sensitive to the possibility that there can be various types of terrorist attacks in our country. And as a result, the President has marshaled a great many of the capabilities of the United States government, including the military, to assist in seeing that we do what is possible. But the only way to deal with these terrorist threats is to go at them where they exist. You cannot defend at every place, at every time, against every conceivable, imaginable, even unimaginable terrorist attack. And the only way to deal with it is to take the battle to where they are and to root them out and to starve them out by seeing that those countries and those organizations and those non-governmental organizations and those individuals that are supporting and hiring, harboring and facilitating these networks stop doing it and find that there's a penalty for doing it. We'll make this the last question, right in the middle. Yes, sir.
Apparently there were strikes in Kandahar and Kabul, and there's some talk about the electricity system going down. Are you running the risk of being characterized as attacking the Afghan people rather than the military targets?
You know, in this world of ours, if you get up in the morning, you're running a risk of having someone lie and someone mischaracterize what it is you're doing. What the United States of America is doing is exactly what I said. It is attempting to defend the United States by taking this back to terrorists that have killed thousands of Americans, that threaten not just the United States, but regimes throughout the world, because they are determined to find ways to intimidate the rest of the world and to terrorize the rest of the world. And we are determined not to be terrorized. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The Secretary of Defense and the new chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Myers, briefing the press. One of my colleagues observes, so begins the process where the American press tries to cover an ongoing military operation, where the military planners and those who speak for them are particularly reluctant to talk about it. This is particularly true of Secretary Rumsfeld, who has been very clear since he came to office that he didn't want to talk about ongoing military operations, even though there were several clues there today, and we'll get to those in just a minute. As you heard, he refused to answer as many questions as he answered, perfectly proper from his point of view, and he said it was too early to speak about the operation, certainly to the press or to the public. But it will be very clear that at the White House and throughout the Pentagon, at the State Department, at the highest levels this afternoon, everybody will know precisely what is happening in real time if they have, as Mr. Rumsfeld might say, a need to know. There's several things to catch up on just while we've been listening to him, and then we'll go back and try to piece together with several of our analysts precisely what the operation might look like based on what we know. We heard a short while ago from one of the news agencies inside Afghanistan that about the same time the United States was attacking at least one of these anti-Taliban forces about 25 miles north of Kabul opened up with 122mm artillery on Taliban forces with whom they had been facing off for many, many months. And so you get something of a coordinated attack there, though perhaps not coordinated specifically, and reaffirms what Mr. Rumsfeld has said, that the aim of the United States here is to strengthen those forces on the ground, and there are many of them, which are interested in getting rid of the Taliban and also getting rid of the Osama bin Laden operation inside Afghanistan. But the shelling on the ground north of Kabul, according to at least one news agency, began about an hour after the U.S. airstrikes. And I think it was General Myers who said that the first operation actually began at 12:30 Eastern Time, which is about 3 hours ago now that it has been going on. Mr. Rumsfeld saying that it is going to continue to go on. It will be a continuous operation. He meant this in two ways. First of all, a continuous military operation against the Taliban. Very strong that this is not against the people of Afghanistan, but against the Taliban. And he always puts it, as does the President, in the broader context of a war that is humanitarian, economic, financial, intelligence in terms of terrorist networks elsewhere. In France, the French President, President Chirac, has said that French forces will take part in military action against Afghanistan. You know that the British took part directly today. The Israeli Foreign Minister Shimon Peres said from Jerusalem today this was a very brave decision by President Bush. As you know, there's been a lot of tension between the United States and at least the Israeli Prime Minister in the last several days. What the Israeli Foreign Minister describes this as a very brave decision by Mr. Bush. The Japanese Prime Minister said that Japan has supported the airstrikes on Afghanistan, and in his country and in many others, we suspect at the moment, he ordered that security be tightened nationwide. Now, I want to go first. There's quite a lot to talk about. We know that there were 40 aircraft involved, some land-based and some based on carriers in the Gulf. We know in at least one instance a Tomahawk cruise missile or missiles was launched from a British submarine. That is what everybody means when they talk about the direct participation of the British. We do not know what sort of an operation there was on the ground, and the Secretary was very careful to talk about commando operations or even intelligence operations on the ground as far as U.S. forces are concerned. At least two B-17s today. These are these huge cargo aircraft. They're almost as big as the C-5, like a whole, somebody once described it, gymnasium full of goods, food and medicine. We're planning food drops for today after the initial phase of the military operation began, and that I think I heard them say involved maybe 37,500 particular packets of food and medicine for Afghans on the ground, particularly, specifically, those outside Taliban areas. And ABC's John McWethy was the one who asked and got a response that at the same time there was something of a propaganda or psychological warfare operation going on as well. Radio broadcasts being made to those people in Afghanistan who do have radios, a leafleting campaign to tell people on the ground what is going on, to be combined with the military operation, which the Secretary says is simply ongoing. We'll hear in a moment from the Taliban ambassador to Afghanistan, who's part of the diplomatic effort that we get out of Afghanistan. But first I want to go to ABC's Tony Congressman, who is our military analyst. And Tony, as you've listened to this entire briefing and you had to sum it up, how would you sum it up?
I think it was very clear, Peter, this is a carefully focused set of strikes. All of it is tailored to minimize collateral damage. The wording made it clear we're striking a lot of targets outside of cities, beyond the air bases we can see on television. It's likely we used very precise ordnance against any populated area, but we also struck at areas where there are munitions depots or heavy equipment that the Taliban needs to fight against groups like the Northern Alliance. If we look at the air bases, we can see, too, the major targets aren't going to be to blow up air bases. There'll be the aircraft on them and the radars, the command facilities. So given the numbers, a limited number of strikes, it's interesting that some of those aircraft are the B-1 because the other bombers are basically usable against one or two targets. The B-1 can use precision ordnance against up to 17 targets in a given area.
And Tony, B-2s flew round trip from the United States as part of the mission.
That's right. They carry laser-guided bombs. They're capable of striking very precisely, even in the most defended areas. So we have to assume that those were used against the main radars or systems like their SA-2 or SA-3 surface-to-air missiles.
And let me just get a clarification on that, because I think I have John McCarthy back at the Pentagon. Not a round trip, John, but they took off from the United States and may have either refueled in the air and landed somewhere else?
That's correct, Peter. It is such a long round trip from Missouri all the way to Afghanistan. They decided to fly them nonstop to their targets, drop their bombs, and then they are being recovered. That means landing somewhere to get refueled and to rest the air crews, which is critically important. So it has to do with the great distance, Peter, as much as anything else.
I recall during Bosnia they actually did fly a round trip. Where would they have landed in order to make an interim stop on the way back to their base in Missouri?
Unclear where they've landed, but likely it was in Britain, if I had to guess.
Okay. Now, John, take us through the rest of this. The Secretary says again, when asked about targets, there are not a lot of high-value targets in the country. Very emphatic, no Air Force, no Army, he even said, and certainly no Navy. Tony makes reference to hitting aircraft on airstrips, but not wishing to destroy landing strips. Take it from there.
Well, Peter, it's a broad strategy of trying to take what is a relatively primitive military and government structure down as many different steps as you can. They are trying to disrupt their ability to communicate. They are trying to disrupt their ability to marshal their forces, to put the different types of armored vehicles on the road that control their people and conduct the fighting on the ground. In every way, they are trying to make the Taliban government less effective today than they were yesterday.
And the Secretary did seem to indicate that this was not just an operation that would cease, it would go on. And I think he meant that in both the broad sense and in the more immediate military sense, right?
Oh, it's definitely going to continue. The bombing is going to continue as they find targets that are worth going after. He did use a phrase, Peter, that he has used before in private many times. The bombing is not a silver bullet. There is no silver bullet that is going to win this war against terrorism. This Secretary of Defense very strongly believes that the military will play a role, but it may not even be the dominant role over the long haul. He likens the whole situation in the Cold War, where we had millions of men facing each other across the Iron Curtain, but it wasn't the soldiers, it wasn't the military strength that ultimately brought down the other side. It imploded from within, and that is what his strategy is in trying to deal with the Al-Qaeda network and the terrorist network.
Now you asked...
bleed them of their finances, bleed them of their ability to do these things, and eventually they wither and are destroyed.
Now, certainly, hopefully, from everybody's point of view, but now you asked about PSYOPs there and about leaflets. Members from the Gulf War, that when leaflets were dropped on Iraqi soldiers and subsequently surrendered, many of them were holding these leaflets. Is this thought in the Pentagon to be an efficient, effective method here?
It is thought to be somewhat marginal, Peter, but it is thought to be one of many different ways that the United States is going to try to communicate with the people on the ground. It's extremely difficult. One of the things that Barney Rubin was explaining to me, he being the expert that we have on Afghanistan, one of many, that roughly half the population in Afghanistan does have radios. So if the United States sets up a radio broadcast system and tries to beam the message into these people, they might just receive it. Although most of the people in Afghanistan English would be tuned to the BBC, I am told.
Well, Barney, thanks, John. Barney Rubin may be one of the many analysts on Afghanistan, but he's certainly one of the best, if not the best, which is why we have him here. Barney, you've been listening to the Secretary. Again, try to give us some sense of perspective from the ground. I know, because you've said it repeatedly, that one of the things you're listening to is the Secretary saying we're there to support the other Afghan forces go after the Taliban. What are the risks involved in that?
Well, I noticed he was very careful in naming those forces. He said the Northern Alliance, but he also said also tribes in the south.
Right.
That means Pashtun tribes, especially in the area around Kandahar, who originally provided some support to the Taliban. And the word I have been receiving the past week or so is those tribes have been meeting continually and decided, we'll see if it's true, that in the event of an attack they would withdraw their support from the Taliban and turn the other direction. And he also said people within the Taliban who do not support the leadership, that is in particular Mullah Omar, and the presence of al-Qaeda. Now, I think we have to put this in the context of the statement we heard from Osama bin Laden. And how that looks to Afghans. I'm not an Afghan, but let me just hazard a guess. Here is this man sitting in Afghanistan, putting the entire country at risk, and he doesn't say a word about Afghanistan. Basically, he's not behaving as a guest. They were saying he's a guest. He's behaving as an invader. It's clear from that tape that he's not concerned about Afghanistan or the welfare of its people. He's concerned about his global program. Now, as far as the risks are concerned, of course, we were listening to the Secretary of Defense, and therefore he was talking about a military approach. As he said, the political questions are for the Department of State. I think the risk right now is that we have moved at a point when the Afghan opposition to the Taliban, which is broad but not very well organized.
Broad but not broad-based.
Well, it could become broad-based, but it's not organized to provide an alternative. I noticed that Prime Minister Blair in his statement said that we want to deliver stability. Those are the words that he used, and that's something that the Afghan people and the people of that region crave. But to do that, we're going to have to move very quickly.
Barney, let me. Yeah. I apologize for interrupting. I just want to ask you very specific.
Sure.
You've got the U.S. coming in defense of the people coming from the north, the so-called United Front or the Northern Alliance, who want to take advantage of this. And you have those in the south wanting to take advantage of this. Are those two forces now going to try to race each other to Kabul, if we even get that far, so that one of them rather than both of them are in power?
Well, I spoke this morning by telephone both to the Northern Alliance and to someone who's working for the former king, Zahir Shah, who is in close touch with the tribes in the south. They said that they have not ready to be implemented yet. They're determined not to rush to Kabul. They don't want to make the mistakes they made in the past. In fact, they would like the United States, when it gets to that point, and others, to call on the United Nations to send in a peacekeeping force to demilitarize Kabul, so that it can be a center for political decision-making and not a center of civil war.
Okay, let me interrupt you for just a second and catch up with some other things. You heard the Secretary say, or General Myers, I believe, there'd been no damage to any American aircraft. Certainly one had not been shot down or damaged. And Al Jazeera is reporting, quoting the Deputy Minister for Defense for the Taliban, as claiming they shot down a plane. We'll get that simply on the record. Now, in terms of this Northern Alliance, we actually have a spokesman for the Northern Alliance with us this afternoon from Washington. His name is Iran Amin. Mr. Amin, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Peter.
Okay. So what's your reaction to today?
Well, over the last few weeks, we have anticipated the counterterrorism effort by the international community. Even as of last night, we mentioned to the media that we were expecting action soon, but it should be done ASAP. The fact of the matter is that both the United States as well as Afghanistan have been victims by Osama bin Laden, who has been hosted in Afghanistan by the Taliban, and with the blessing of the military intelligence of Pakistan. We welcome it, and as far as on the ground, our forces are on alert. When the due time comes, that we will also engage from the ground the strikes that have already taken place in Afghanistan.
Let me ask you sort of an attitude question about Afghans on the ground, whether they're for or against the Taliban in this instance. When in the first instance 37,000 food and medicine packets begin raining down from the skies with "Gift of the USA" written on them, how will Afghans react? Will they be nervous, frightened, suspicious, grateful?
Well, remember that the international resolve here is to rid the Afghans of the grip of tyranny that the Taliban in their terrorist networks have engaged in Afghanistan. The Afghans really want to become liberated once again. I mean, in the occupied parts of Afghanistan. So they would look at the international counterterrorism resolve from a very friendly perspective, and they've in fact anticipated this for quite some time.
So you actually believe, just to be absolutely precise about it, that when food and medicine packages, and we're told they're vegetarian packages, nobody wishing to offend Muslims,
yes,
rain down on the ground, people will be grateful for them, goodness knows they need them.
Well, definitely. I mean, in the face of the drought and in the face of what has happened over the last few years, people would welcome that immediately because they have had no food. I mean, there were incidents in Afghanistan for the last few months that people have actually even eaten grass and in the non-kosher practice of eating donkeys and horses in Afghanistan.
No.
So the food would be automatically welcomed as well as medicine. I mean, you know that the life expectancy, for example, for kids is about, 1 out of 5 kids don't make it to the 5th birthday. So, I mean, these are the realities on the ground in Afghanistan. It has been because of the tremendous long years of neglect that the world really just didn't care about the Afghans altogether.
Okay, I want to bring in John Hillen, if I may. Thank Mr. Mean, just stay with us if you would for a minute. I want to bring in John Hillen, who was with us earlier this morning, and as we're looking at that videotape of the food drops which were done to the Kurds in northern Iraq at the end of the Gulf War. John, I'm fascinated to hear that you can drop something from 30,000 feet without a parachute.
Well, obviously it means the packages they'll be dropping are pretty light. But basically, Peter, as we saw from your footage, even today, 10 years on from those drops in northern Iraq, it's pretty unscientific in many ways. And it takes, it's pretty labor intensive. You literally kick the drops out the door. So one thing we should emphasize is this search and rescue mission, which you talked about earlier, perhaps run out of Uzbekistan. We now know that there were 40 combat aircraft and 2 C-17s over Afghanistan tonight. So that's well over 100 American airmen and women that were in the air. So that could be a pretty substantial mission down the road, preparing for worst-case contingencies there.
Could you come back just to the food drop? Maybe I'm overly fascinated by it, but General Myers is saying that since the Gulf War, they've made this a lot more sophisticated, this dropping food to people, because Kurds were killed, as I recall, when food pallets dropped on them then. How's it done now?
Well, I think they learned a lot in Bosnia and in the Balkans in '94 and '95. But basically, if you're going to drop humanitarian relief from an altitude, and I think they mentioned that it'd be a very high altitude, although they didn't mention the exact altitude, it's going to have to be very light and therefore pretty dispersed. And in terrain like Afghanistan, I think they'll have to have a very good idea of the area they want to cover and try to put it down right there, because otherwise it will end up strewn about the mountains.
There was some confidence, I thought, from General Myers that they could be pretty precise about where they wanted to put it down.
He was very confident, but the other part is, in the delivery of humanitarian relief supplies, you need a crowd. You need a crowd because that's the most efficient way to actually deliver the supplies once they're on the ground. And sometimes you don't want to attract a crowd in these sorts of circumstances. So this could be very interesting, exactly how this is going to play out. And he alluded to the fact that they may have already been in contact with relief agencies, indigenous or otherwise, on the ground to help in the delivery of these supplies once they actually get there.
Now, John, you're an Army Special Operations officer, or you were. As you listen to the briefing from the Pentagon today, what catches your attention?
Well, there's a lot of special operations missions embedded in there or alluded to directly. I talked about the search and rescue package. Well over 100 Air Force personnel in the skies over Afghanistan tonight. And if this is an ongoing operation, there will be more of that to come. The other is, and John McWethy asked the question about psychological operations. Peter, you said that if they have radios, well, you know, we'll in fact probably supply radios. Right before the invasion of Haiti in 1994, we actually dropped transistor radios tuned to one station, which was then being run out of an American aircraft circling over Haiti. That provided a lot of psychological operation support. And in the Gulf War, I remember Republican Guard prisoners surrendering to my unit in the very early days of the ground invasion almost invariably had those leaflets. Many of them were illiterate, and the leaflets gave the message to them in almost comic book form. And then the Secretary of Defense also talked about intelligence gathering. And so that'll be a very important mission, because this bombing, I think, tonight seeks to dislocate the terrorist networks. And when they dislocate terrorists, they'll move. And when they move, they will be
speranza
Can I do a 502?
The player is Ichiro. Hello, my name is Ippei Endo. My favorite player is Kazuhiro Sasaki. Hello, my name is Toshiki Maebashi. My favorite player is Ichiro. Hello, my name is Kazumasa Sakamoto. My favorite player is Roberto Alomar.
Hello, my name is Koki Tsukuda. My favorite player is Hideki Matsui.
Hello, my name is Masato Komuro. My favorite player is Jason Giambi.
Hello, my name is Junpei Kiyoshima. My favorite player is Giambi.
Hello, my name is Kento Motojima. My favorite player is Matsui.
Hello, my name is Eito Ono. My favorite player is Jason Giambi.
Harold, Ichiro and Matsui, we would expect that, but how about the support of Jason Giambi in Tokyo?
All those Yankee games. Well, let's meet the youngsters from Florida. In left field, we got Matt Overton. His favorite food is tacos, any kind. Center fielder, Benny Townend. His favorite team is the Atlanta Braves. The right fielder, R.J. Neal. He wants to meet his favorite actress, Jennifer Lopez. At third base, Richie DeJesus. He likes to read and he loves those Harry Potter book series. The shortstop, Jordan Irene. His favorite subject, geography. Second baseman, Devin Travis. When he's not watching baseball, he loves the Dallas Cowboys. First baseman, Cody Emerson. His favorite subject, get this, Brent, recess. Catcher, Andrew Weaver. He's a fan of the Orlando Magic. And pitching on the mound, we called him a cool customer earlier. His role model, no wonder, James Bond.
Then James Bond is no geek.
How about those interviews? Were those great?
Those were wonderful. Well, here he is, what he has done here at the Little League World Series. 11 scoreless innings. He beat Arizona in the big one. And Harold, let's take a look at the pitch speed comparison, because this young man can throw in the upper 70s here.
Well, he's incredible to see what he does. Now, as you get a good look, a 70-mile-an-hour fastball, that'd be equivalent to 91. Now, Little League Baseball pitches from 46 feet. Major League 60 feet, 6 inches. You will see pitches from 75 to 77 miles an hour when Michael Barada is throwing. That's getting it up there.
It certainly is, and the umpire will have to keep an eye on that is Steve Sullivan from Bay City, Texas. He's our plate man tonight. We've got umpires from Kentucky, Panama, California, Pennsylvania, and Warren Hill from Billings, Montana. Just a splendid night for baseball. We're down in the 70s right now. Very little humidity. There is our crowd, the famous hill here at South Williamsport, Pennsylvania. Night starting to close in. The youngsters from Boynton Beach trying to do what no team from Florida has ever done, and that's win the Little League Championship. They'll face Nakahara to start the game. Nakahara has been on base 56% of the time here the last couple of weeks. He's been an outstanding leadoff man now for the Japanese team, and let's see what Broad does with that fastball on the first pitch. Slap foul down the right field line, and you can see how he's bringing it right away, Harold.
First pitch of the day. Now, it's not like these kids are going to take a while to loosen up. He's pretty loose. 11 and 12 years old. That's getting it up there. Mercy.
Just a little inside. Ken Emerson, the manager of the Boynton Beach team, juggled his outfield because of Broad being on the mound. He moved R.J. Neal from center over to right field here tonight. So that's why number 5 is out at right. He figures that the hitters are going to be a little bit late on this fastball. And so far, he's been right on the money.
It's so difficult to catch up to, and you got to realize they've probably never seen anybody throwing this hard. How do you combat this? Well, you back up in the box. And the reaction time is minuscule. You see how deep in the box he's trying to get. We'll get into reaction a little bit later.
First strikeout of the night.
Here's a good look at this fastball. It's just, he grips at all four seams and just lets it fly. That was 76 miles an hour. That's equivalent to a 98-mile-an-hour Major League fastball.
Now here's Omai, son of the Japanese manager. That's his sister that Sam interviewed, one of the coaches over there. He's been on base 47% of the time, and he slaps one foul the other way.
Now they're going to run Neal over to left field since the lefties are going to be a little bit late.
I might enter into this game in the 5th and the 6th. You never know with these Little League managers. Always trying to stay ahead of the game. DeJesus now shortens up at third. A step. He's in on the grass, guarding the line here against a left-handed hitter. And DeJesus might get some business before the night's over.
Get a good look at the open stance. Now, with an open stance, you got to come back and close. He still stays open. You try to do anything to speed yourself up to get your hands through that zone when somebody's throwing this hard.
Good old country hardball.
Tried to throw a little bit of a changeup. I think that's the one thing he doesn't want to do is speed up their bat all of a sudden.
1-2, looking for his second strikeout here in the first inning. We notice that the shortstop is battling just a little bit of a sun problem right now. Irene has switched over to play shortstop tonight, shading his eyes. You can see with his glove there, and of course the sun will go down behind the stands here rather quickly, but this is starting an hour earlier, and the left field and deep off the wall. Oh my, pulls into second base with a 2-strike double.
Nice piece of hitting. Just caught up to the fastball. Fortunately for Michael Broad, it stayed in the ballpark. This ball was hit pretty good. Fastball right down the middle. He was a little bit late, but he caught up to it just enough of it to drive it off the wall.
Now here comes the big fella. Otaro Tanaka, been on base 61% of the time here at the Little League World Series. Slammed the 2 home runs in the international final against Curacao. The pitcher tonight. Past the catcher. Omai takes third with 1 out.
That is a big play right there. Third base becomes really scoring position in Little League Baseball. And then you got to minimize your mistakes when you're playing against a team like this. But third base, we've seen time and time again, pass ball, different ways to score. With the fences being 205, it's
into
tough.
the windup, okay, before you set up.
So when he goes to his windup, then they want him to get set up. When you watch Tanaka, well, you go way back in the lore of Japanese baseball. Sadahara O featured
He turned, I turned, same time, synonymous timing.
But he finished and you didn't come back, Coach.
I did come back.
That's a visit.
So Kenny is charged with a visit.
One ball.
He was saying that he went out the same time that the coach went to talk to the hitter. And umpire disagreed.
Well, I was talking about Sadahara O, and you can see how the weight is way back. And after the third visit in an inning or the fourth visit in the game, Michael Broad has to be brought out. Now watch the weight back here on Tanaka. Toe up. Broad is being very fine with him, and he's fallen behind 3-0 on the big man with Omeda up next. And Omeda is no easy out. He's been on base 78% of the time.
We've seen a lot of 3-0 swings in this Little League World Series. Coach is not afraid to cut them loose.
There's Omeda. Will be next for the Japanese team. Runner on at third base with 1 out in the top of the first inning. Michael Broad of Boynton Beach. Throwing it right by him now. So after falling behind by 3 balls, Harold, he's right back in at 3-2 now.
Here's a good look. He's trying to look for something inside. The ball ends up on the outside half. Now, they're setting up the catcher late because I think they felt like they were being tipped off on location.
High fly ball. Playable in left field. Overton Overton makes the put out. Oh my, coming home, the throw. Got him! A double play. Matt Overton to Weaver for the put out. How about that, ladies and gentlemen?
This ball was hit so high, it left him time to get behind it, and what a block by the catcher, Brent. Mercy, Weaver right behind. What's the play by Weaver? The catcher outside of the great throw.
Boy, it almost looked like that plate umpire was getting ready to call safe, wasn't it, folks? Close. Let's just say real close. But Boynton Beach will take it, and they'll be coming up now at the bottom of the first inning.
Introducing Oatmeal Crisp Fruit and Cereal Bars. Real oatmeal crisp cereal layered with real fruit. Delicious, crispy, not your usual fruit and cereal bar. New Oatmeal Crisp Fruit and Cereal Bars. It's the cereal bar with the cereal crunch.
I want to put my name on the list.
There's no place like Outback. With call-ahead seating,
Nelson?
just call up, get on the list, and you'll be seated in no time. Outback's call-ahead seating.
You know what's the biggest problem advertising the refreshing taste of 7-Up? Getting people to sit still for your commercials. Come on. Breathe. Well, problem solved. Here you go, sir. Enjoy yourself. I'm just making sure you watch the whole thing. Pay attention. Here you go. Can't handle it.
The NFL's preseason proving grounds. Monday Night Football, Colts, Broncos, Monday night on ABC.
The bottom of the first inning, and the Japanese team takes the field from the third base dugout here at Lamade Stadium. Huddle around Tanaka at the mound, which is a tradition. And this is the lineup that Tanaka will be looking at from Boynton Beach, brought to you by 7-Up. And let's let these youngsters from South Florida introduce themselves.
Hi, my name is Devin Travis, and my favorite player is Gary Sheffield. Hi, my name is Jordan Irene, and my favorite player is Yvonne Rodriguez.
Hi, I'm Michael Broad, and my favorite player is Derek Jeter.
Hi, my name is Richie De Jesus. My favorite player is Andrew Jones.
Hi, my name is RJ Neal. My favorite player is Tori Hunter.
Hi, my name is Cody Emerson. My favorite player is Dontrell Willis.
Hi, my name is Benny Tannen, and my favorite player is Andrew Jones. My name is Matt Overton, and my favorite player is Juan Ignacio.
Hi, my name is Andrew Weaver. My favorite player is Alfonso Soriano.
My name is Patrick Roll, and my favorite player is Alex Gonzalez. Hi, my name is Ricky Sabatino, and my favorite player is Derek Jeter.
Well, an assortment of Marlins scattered in there with Yankees and Braves as the youngsters' favorites here.
Well, let's look at the youngsters from Japan and how they line up defensively. In left field, we got Toshiki Maobashi. His favorite movie is Jurassic Park. In center field, we got Ippei Endo. His favorite team is Seattle Mariners. In right field, we got Hokato Nakahara. His favorite player is Ichiro Suzuki. At third base, we got Hirofumi Yamazaki. His favorite food is pizza. At shortstop, this youngster can pick it. Kazumasa Sakamoto. His favorite subject is home economics. At second base, Kento Motojima. He says, give me noodles, man. I love noodles. The first baseman, Shigeki Omeda. His favorite subject is music. The catcher is Jun Anozawa. His favorite subject is English. And the pitcher, we've talked about him all day, Yutaro Takanara, and his favorite subject is math.
Well, manager Omai has a 14-man roster here at the Little League World Series, and the rules say that everyone has to play at least one complete inning defensively or one at bat. So already he has made his first substitution. He has sent Marujima out to play second base defensively.
Well, here's how the field's comparison. You know, in Little League Baseball, you see a Major League field. This is your average big league ballpark. You know, they all have different things on them, but Little League is pretty simple. It's 205 feet all the way around, 46 feet from pitcher's mound, and 60 feet on the base paths. That's how the little guys match up. Remember, 11 and 12 years old, and they play 6 innings in these games.
Well, here comes the leading hitter at this year's Little League World Series. He's a pepper pot, Devin Travis. He's been on base 69% of the time, and well, those youngsters from Saugus, Mass, they hope they never have to face him in competition again. He went 6 for 6 in the 2 games that those 2 teams split. Most important, of course, last night when this team from Boynton Beach won the United States Championship. Tanaka ready with his first pitch. Well, we're going to see more of a breaking ball from Tanaka along with a fastball. Probably doesn't bring it quite as hard as Broad does, but we'll see. That's his pops, Tony Travis, coaching down third base here for Boynton Beach.
Thinking at home, first pitch curveball. Well, they scout each other, Brent. It's amazing how they come out, they watch the games, and they scout, and they know Travis jumps on that first pitch fastball a lot.
Tanaka with a little bit of a hitch, nothing like Nomo's, but you notice a lot of pitchers who come out of Asia will have that little bit of pause before they bring it, getting the weight distributed and then the follow-through. Swung on and missed. And Tanaka opens up the game with a strikeout.
Here's what Brent's talking about, that little hesitation, and then comes through. Yeah, and he's got great mechanics. He doesn't really pause that long like you were saying. A lot of times that pause can throw you off because you start trying to start your swing too early.
Jordan Irene, and on base 57% of the time for the Floridians, stepping in and just missing. Major league pitch that'll be measured around 88 miles an hour.
With the hesitation that he has, it looks like it's a little bit harder than that. Now, don't be slighted. That's still getting it up there pretty good for Little League.
It may take a time around, Harold, for the youngsters for Boynton Beach to get a timing and a feel for this delivery, too, as we watch now from Mass Camp.
No, you're absolutely right. It takes a little bit of time to figure that out.
What?
You know, it's an interesting story with the catcher. Juno.
A little bit too lax up there, okay? If we don't swing the bat, we can't hit the ball. That was a very good eye on that. Okay, but if he's going to come with that fastball, we like it. Let's start jumping on it, okay? Don't go in the hole, right? Hey, 2-1. Let's go. One go.
It's good advice. Look for that fastball. You can always adjust to an off-speed pitch. Look for a fastball and then adjust. Don't look off-speed and try to catch up to a fastball. It doesn't happen very often.
Bottom of the first inning and no score.
I can't tell his call. I don't know if he's saying ball or strike, and they have to wait to see if he's going to point or not.
The beauty of television. Yeah. We can just wait. Much tougher on a radio announcer, I might add. Part of the great crowd here. With tremendous crowds they've had the last couple of weeks. Count is full with 1 out. A year ago, the United States beat Japan 1-0, and just a great game. Victory for Louisville, Kentucky. Tremendous group of little leaguers. Swung at that high heat, and that's 2 strikeouts for Tanaka to start this game.
Talked about in the open, he's He's got great stuff, and he keeps him off balance with that curveball. There's a nice look at a high, hard fastball coming right at you. When you're throwing that hard from that close of a distance, you have a tendency to chase pitches out of the zone, and that's what's happening right now.
Now here's Michael Broad. He does have those 3 home runs, but he's been on base only 44% of the time, which is not amongst the leaders in Little League. And he goes fishing. We've seen him chase some high heat here this last week, too.
Well, it's the most difficult pitch to hit at this age is anything off speed, because all you practice is fastballs. And that's something that you learn and grow as you become more accustomed to playing.
Travis taking a hard look out there, trying to get a read on fastball off-speed pitch. He's not easy to read either with this motion. He keeps it the same on both pitches so far. Up into the 90s now, and he's ahead in the count again, looking to strike the side out here.
1 ball, 2 strikes.
So what kind of a 2-strike hitter Michael is tonight.
Ball.
Tough play right there. I was getting ready to talk about Jun Onozawa, the catcher. He was the only guy who could catch Tanaka. That's how he got the assignment a couple of years ago when they were playing on a younger team, and he just became a catcher. He's actually an outfielder.
Tanaka weighs 180 pounds, and he has struck out the side here in the bottom of the first inning. So the youngsters from Boynton Beach know now that they've got their hands full with the powerful right-hander from Tokyo. Through 1. Remember, in Little League competition, legal game, 6 innings, and we're scoreless after 1.
Hey, what's with the long faces on YouTube?
We figured you just didn't want to tell us in front of the other guys.
Tell you what?
Well, I mean, I did give up 15 hits. And I kind of dropped 6 easy fly balls. 7. Well, thanks a lot.
So, what's the problem?
You mean you want us to play?
I wouldn't have it any other way. See you at practice.
At Honda, we're proud to be a sponsor of Little League Baseball.
Tuesdays this fall, 8 Simple Rules invites you back for an all-new season and an all-new look.
No, hold it. No, just please watch 8 Simple Rules. Thank you. Go to your rooms.
Same father, same rules. 8 Simple Rules returns Tuesdays this fall at 8/7 Central on ABC.
Hi, I lowered my cholesterol. Yeah, these are nice. I lowered my cholesterol.
In case you haven't already heard the news, Honey Nut Cheerios can help lower your cholesterol as part of a heart-healthy diet, and with its sweet honey taste. That ought to make you really happy.
My cholesterol's down, excuse me.
Honey Nut Cheerios. Be happy, be healthy.
At Parnell's, we save you money by purchasing truckloads of closeouts. I just purchased several trailer loads of decorator sofas. These $600 sofas are all on sale for $299. Matching love seats are $279. Beauty Rest Queen mattress sets, $499. Simmons Queen mattress sets, $299. And 12 months same as cash. Parnell's, Gadsden, Oxford, Linlock, Pell City, Alabaster, Arab, Albertville, Fort Walton, Bessemer, and Eastwood Mall.
Jeff Spiegel, only on ABC 3340.
We mentioned last year, top of the first inning, Aaron Alvey at bat for Louisville. A home run. And Alvey then made that run stand up. He was overpowering, striking out 11 of the Japanese hitters. The final out. And Kentucky wins a title for the United States, and at least one of the players has come back, and he's with Sam now.
All right, Brian, Ethan Henry, Justin Elkins from that World Championship team last year. Ethan, what was it like when you look around, you see all these people here, not only to play in this environment, but to win it all?
It was really nervous watching all these people watching you and stuff, but once you get out there on the ball field, all of it goes away.
Now, how long did it take you guys to really realize what you accomplished? How long did it take for it to sink in?
About a year. I didn't realize what I've done until I got here, watching these kids play. Some really awesome teams out here.
What about you, Justin?
Well, it took me about 3 or 4 months, and then it really sunk in on me.
And now you come back here on your family vacation, right?
Right.
You guys are having fun, right?
Definitely.
All righty, back up to Brent.
Thanks, Sam. What a wonderful performance that was. Just a great scene here in South Williamsport. And our aerial coverage for today's Little League World Series is courtesy of the Outback Steakhouse Airship Bloomin' Onion 1. And we've reached the second inning here. As you look down on the great crowd, Omede, the cleanup hitter, steps in. He's been on base 78% of the time for the Japanese team.
Ball!
To make an out is
1 ball.
something must be wrong with this. 78% of the time they're on base. I like that.
Played baseball a long, long time with a 78% on base percentage.
Ball.
Boy, he's really starting to bring the heat. Mid-90s.
When you mentioned playing baseball, Shigeki Omeda, he was a soccer player, never played baseball until he watched the Japanese team in 2000 on TV and said, I want to play baseball.
Beautiful grab by Travis.
How about that smile, Brent? It's a heck of a play. So line drive, he takes a step back. That is one tremendous athletic move.
And that is 2 outstanding defensive plays by Boynton Beach already in this game. Onozawa steps in. He's been on base 44% of the time.
Brent, look how much he's choking up on the bat. That was one of the strategies in our meeting this morning. We met with the coach, and he said, we're going to choke up and try to put the ball in play. It's halfway up the barrel.
And we were talking to Omai. He was laughing about how he had watched young Broad pitch against Arizona on television, and of course he saw the numbers flash up there on the screen into the high 90s, and he just sort of chuckled because he admitted he hadn't faced anybody in this competition who throws as hard as Broad. But Michael's question now is going to be finding the strike zone.
Well, I think they have him thinking way too much. You know, the other night he threw probably 5 off-speed pitches in the whole 6-inning game. We've already seen him bouncing balls to the plate, throwing them to the screen, instead of just going ahead and picking the corners like he talked about in his early interview before the game started.
Onozawa choking up, slaps one foul down the right field line. 2 observations early about the Japanese players in this game. They've been patient. They're not helping him out. They're not swinging at bad pitches. And they have been making contact. More contact than Arizona did early against young Broad the other night. Almost a defensive swing as that one pounds in on him at 96 miles an hour if it was a big league pitch.
That was hit it or get hit. This ball tails right back at him. And I'm telling you, if he doesn't put that in play, he's taking one right off the right forearm. It's a good thing he fouled it off. Making him work.
They've done that at both innings, Harold, and that could add up in a Little League game.
See, I think the one thing that we haven't seen is the catcher off the plate. You know, that wide strike that you can get in Little League Baseball. They haven't tried to exploit that. You know, if they try to pitch to a Major League zone and call a Major League zone in Little League Baseball, we'll be here all night. So that's one of the advantages you have in Little League. You can go off the plate a little bit and still be able to get that strike.
Pitches being called from the dugout. Broad, of course, fastball thrower. The count of 2-2 and 1 out here at the top of the 2nd inning. Interesting about Michael Broad, he plays on a junior varsity team. He plays shortstop at a very high level. And the first time he's pitched has been this summer for this Little League All-Star team from South Florida. Got the corner that time, 96 miles an hour. Well, tomorrow night, join Al, John, and Lisa Guerrero in Denver. An NFL preseason special coming your way. The Colts and the Broncos. How will the Broncos do this year with Jake Plummer as their new quarterback? Be interested to see what John Madden has to say about that. Tomorrow night, 8 Eastern on ABC. Plummer was an interception waiting to happen late in his stint down with the Arizona Cardinals, and we'll see how he makes out there in Denver with Coach Shanahan. Shanahan has been very successful, but that team hasn't been quite the same without one Mr. Elway. 95. I mean, everything is a mid-90s right now here.
And really, that's all he's got to feature. He doesn't have to worry about messing around with trying to throw off speed. Just go ahead and move the catcher in and out and try to throw it by. That is hard to hit a ball that fast.
Pretty pitch.
I can't tell if he's saying strike or ball. See, that's TV again. I can wait.
You know what's interesting about Broad? He is now starting to go to that cap. He did it repeatedly against Arizona. He seems to be getting in a little bit of a groove. He's got 2 out here.
A little more comfortable, back into his normal little routine.
Never breaks a sweat, folks. This is Cool Hand Luke. Target set up late. Ground ball. Base hit right field. The second hit for the Japanese team. Yamazaki.
Just getting ready to say, I'm so impressed with the approach of these young men. Took his time. He waited for Michael Broad to go through all his touching the cap and trying to pick up his motion. Didn't even put his bat up, and then he got himself ready to hit.
Ippei Endo. I think you can see why Japan has given the major leagues Ichiro and Matsui. When you watch these youngsters, how disciplined they are, the practices that we have seen here the last couple of weeks. Take this sport very, very seriously. And the Japanese, when they come in here, it has struck me through the last decade, they play it really as a team game. Yeah, there's individual statistics, but they really bond together as a group. Now, here's Endo. Into second. So there's the list right there, and they've achieved a great deal, Harold, that group.
Really come over and adjusted well. It's a different style of game, the American game, than the Japanese game, and they've really caught on.
1-1 and 2 out.
Ball.
It is interesting to me how the United States has exported baseball much more successfully than, say, Europe or South America has been able to import soccer into this country. Now, just think about that for a moment. Think about how baseball has grown, especially over in Asia. And it was nice to see, Harold, that Taipei has come back into the fold. They stayed out of it for a couple of years, but they competed. And I think this Japanese team beat them like 16 or 17 to 1 in a regional over there. So we're looking at a powerful team with the daughter of the manager, one of the coaches watching for the dugout.
You know, you're watching Michael Broad. All of a sudden, he got a 1-1 count, and the runner went to second. He threw 3 straight off-speed pitches. You know, they're thinking way too much. You need to just let him go ahead and play the game.
So Irene will call the pitches from the Boynton Beach dugout. Father of the shortstop. 2 on and 2 out. The Japanese team threatening again. And Maibashi, who's been on base only 13% of the time. And with a youngster like this, you would expect Broad just to keep bringing fastball after fastball at him and not mess around here. Again, all of the hitters choking up against him. Broad should handle it himself. Does. So the Japanese team leaves a couple of runners stranded. They have threatened twice, but Michael Broad has wiggled free, and we're still scoreless.
So, are you telling us, Mr. Billy, that you have found something that you agree with your mom's on?
That is correct, Senator.
And what would that be?
Checks. We like it, and our moms like that we like it.
Even without the marshmallow puffs and bright
bright colors. You'll happily eat Chex?
That is correct, Senator.
You do realize that Chex is low in sugar?
Did you know that? No one.
There's one cereal they like that you want them to like. Chex. Everyone's in the same square.
Who voted for these guys? Not me.
And he drops the throw. Completes the underneath pass. Wow, what a hit. Throws to his back. Complete. He takes it to the 30, 20, 10. Touchdown Raiders.
Rated E for everyone.
What's wrong, hon?
I brought the wrong color. I can't go out like this.
It can't be all that bad. I guess we're not going out back.
I'll get my coat.
There's no place like Outback. For our new center cut fillet and decadent chocolate thunder.
Looking pretty rare, Mrs. D.
Thank you.
Outback Steakhouse. No rules, just right.
I am Kenyan. Scientists have spent millions of dollars to find out why I'm fast. They say it's the high altitude. They say it's my special Kenyan diet. They don't know why, but I'm fast. Very, very fast. I don't need these shoes. Maybe you do.
Do I have to ask? Do I? Do I? Well, okay. Are you ready for me? Are you ready for me? Because I'm ready for some football.
The season begins September 4th on ABC with NFL Kickoff Live, starring Britney Spears, Mary J. Blige, Aerosmith, and Aretha Franklin, plus the Jets versus the Redskins.
Are you ready?
This fall.
I was calling your cell phone the whole way home. Why didn't you answer? That is my cell phone.
Faith Ford and Kelly Ripa in Hope and Faith, part of the all-new TGIF on ABC.
How does an umpire earn a trip to the Little League World Series? He learns how to dance. Let's check in and see what Grant Paulson has found cooking down there.
Well, with every baseball game comes hot dogs, snow cones, and bubble gum. With me, I have Matt and Zach, and they're going to have a bubble gum blowing contest. Let's go, guys. They're on the first baseline. Who's got the biggest bubble? Matt's off to a good start. Zach's got the bubble coming out of his mouth. Matt, come on, guys. Who's got the biggest bubble? Matt's got it. It's popped. Zach's coming. Matt, Zach, who's it going to be? No, there it is. Zach's got the biggest one so far. Matt, what do you have? Let's go. No big bubbles so far. Down the stretch they come. Matt and Zach, there it is. That is your winner. Zach has won the bubblegum contest. An intense baseball game, an intense bubblegum contest. Brent, what do you think?
Down the stretch they come, Grant.
How about the sign, Brent?
Lots of, I don't know how many dads want to meet Sam, but a lot of young fellas want to meet Sam, I'll tell you that. And I certainly can't blame them.
But don't tell the moms.
Okay, bottom of the second inning now, and Boynton Beach, and here comes the young man who's had himself a heck of a World Series. Here is Richie DeJesus, the third baseman from Boynton Beach. You know, a couple of years ago, there was a team from Apopka, Florida. That's a town not too far from Orlando. And to get here, they beat the youngsters from Boynton Beach. So this year, they got a little bit even, and they were able to get through Apopka. And there's a nice pitch now. Richie DeJesus, what was it, Harold, that Kenny told us that he was about 2 for 40 coming in here, and now he has just smoked the ball, been on base 60% of the time.
Caught on fire. Ball? Yeah.
But this curveball and change of speeds by Tanaka really has the Floridians off balance here.
He's got to see the batting average there. Tanaka has been fantastic, particularly the breaking pitch, because he's kept them off balance so good. Richie's got a nice little set stance, ready to let it fly.
Great breaking ball. That's the 4th strikeout for Tanaka in this game. Travis, one of the victims earlier. You look down on one of the grand scenes, Lamade Stadium here in South Williamsport. 41,000, we are told, is the crowd on hand for this championship game. R.J. Neal stepping in, and Tanaka is working on a gem here in the early going. 4 up and 4 strikeouts. I suppose, Harold, my question now is, would it be a good idea to put a bunt down and make Tanaka feel the ball a little bit?
Absolutely. Anytime you get in a situation where a pitcher's on a roll, it's not bad to put a bunt down. The other thing he's doing now, he's 2-0. He's down this batter, but he's been hitting that first fastball for a strike, and that's set up everything else.
You're going to have to work against this young man. Right down the middle, and that's 96 miles an hour. That's up there with Broad, and now you get that wicked little breaking ball when he changes up on it. And what we said at the top of the broadcast, we expect runs to be scarce with these two on the mound.
Well, you see the bug that Brent and I are talking about will drop down below the scoreboard. It'll be one speed will be the Little League equivalent at 46 miles an hour, and then the Major League, what it would be if it was a Major League pitcher.
R.J. Neal slapping one back. R.J. hit the first of 4 home runs for Boynton Beach last night against Saugus, Mass. And again, congratulations to those youngsters from Massachusetts. They played a game for the ages, and so do those youngsters from Texas. Went 7 innings, 14-13. Saugus advancing. They'll be talking about that game for years and years here in Williamsport. Count is full now on R.J. Neal.
Straight back. He's got a nice approach, and he's choked up on the bat too. This allows you to use your hands a little bit and accelerate them. Here's a good look at trying to get that fastball by him.
And a base runner, the first one of the night. And a quick program reminder. This fall now, when two opposite sisters live under the same roof, things are going to get, well, messy. Faith Ford and Kelly Ripa are Hope and Faith. Coming Fridays this fall, part of the all-new TGIF on ABC. Runner on at first here in Lamity Stadium. And Cody Emerson, last night's winning pitcher and the son of the manager. Kenny Emerson steps in now.
And there was that bunt you were talking about. He showed it, but maybe he missed a sign. They want him to swing the bat.
Now, Joe, in his warm-up swing, tell him to take his hands out in his warm-up swing. I don't care if he's bunting or what, but take him out.
One ball.
Cody's been on base only 14% of the time here in Williamsport.
It's tough for the kids too. I've seen Tanaka a few times looking at the umpire like, I don't know if you're calling a ball or a strike, because he makes the same sound on both a ball and a strike.
Ball.
2 balls and 1 strike.
2 balls, 1 strike.
R.J. Neal, the runner at first, cannot leave until the pitch reaches the hitter. The Little League rule looking for mass cam.
Ball.
Snapped that one off pretty good. Now another 3-1 count. When you take a look at the percentage of pitches that Tanaka has thrown.
Only way I want you to swing. He's not throwing strikes, so you're going to take it. Hey, track it all the way back into the glove. Look at it.
Coming in here in the 8 innings he worked, only 62% strikes, which is lower than the other 2 teammates on the Japanese squad, who throw 70% of the time, throw strikes. And now he's gone 3-1 again, and they want another base runner. And he just pounds this one right down the middle. Count is full now with 1 out.
3 balls, 2 strikes. Full count.
R.J. ready. Past him. That is 5 strikeouts. All 5 of the outs for the Japanese team have been strikeouts by Big Tanaka. And Benny Townend, who's been on base 27% of the time, steps up now for Boynton Beach.
His whole life, all Tanaka wants to do is play baseball. He says he wants to be a Major League Baseball player, play in Japan and maybe come to America and play.
The Japanese manager telling us that the ladder progresses from amateur baseball in Japan to the Japanese League and then to the big leagues in the United States. They look at the bigs in the U.S. as the premier league, fouled away. And Matsui, he said, would be their big hero. Yankee games, Mariner games, shown all the time over in Japan, especially in Tokyo, where this team is from. And so many of them admire those two great players. 1-1 now the count.
I think anytime you get in the count 2-1, 1-0, 3-1, you got to be ripping at that fastball. And both these kids are throwing that hard. You got to jump on it.